The door in Lin Shou's mind contains incredible abilities, powerful side door control techniques, and expensive left-wing supernatural powers. Lin Shou can all transfer costs. It is said that it is rare to die of being an outsider, but the more Lin Shou practices, the longer his lifespan. The adopted boy became the founder of the Zhou Dynasty after 100 years. After 1,000 years of guidance, the scholar became the second sage of Confucianism. After 10,000 years, the city god who was casually appointed became the lord of the heavenly palace. Amidst the vicissitudes of the world, Lin Shou stands alone on the left path of immortality. Keywords of the novel. Left path Changsheng. I can transfer the cost without a pop-up window, left path Changsheng. I can transfer the cost. Download the complete text, left path Changsheng. I can transfer the cost. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth through borrowing corpse, new book for collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Rebirth through borrowing corpse, new book for collection. Daqian, Huashui County, Dongxing Province, is a suburban area 15 miles away, with wild mountains and ridges. On the dry land, rugged and strange rocks grow. Dead branches and decaying trees, corpses and debris, scattered everywhere. This is the Tomb Mountain of Huashui County. Many small graves have exposed their coffins without repair, some of which have rotted. The burial clothes are mixed with decaying body mats, and dead bones are scattered everywhere. The nearby scorched old willow trees and twisted branches all point to the dull sky. Old crows squat on the branches of the trees, pecking and licking the black feathers, occasionally chirping a few times, which is chilling. The next moment, a cough sounded, and the old crow on the branch flapped its wings in surprise, flying around in the sky. Lin Jiuyo opened his eyes, lifted half of the straw mat from his body, stood up, and looked at the tender hands in front of him, tapping his head as if he had just woken up from a hangover. Oh, this is not what time travel is. Am I Lin Jiu? Lin Jiu looked around in confusion and murmured to himself. This self-questioning can be considered as a connection to the cause and effect of the predecessor, and a series of scenes emerge before us, which are the memories of the predecessor. His predecessor's name was Lin Jiu. He was the son of a wealthy man from Daqian, Dongxing Province, Anming County, and Huashui County. At the age of 12, he was at the right age to pursue education and achieve fame. Unfortunately, the state of Daqian is in dire straits, and the country's generals will perish and demons will thrive. The wealth of the Lin Shou family has become a life-threatening talisman. After the newly appointed county magistrate took office, he found that the taxes in Huashui city had been received for 80 years, and there was no profit or loss. Therefore, he set his sights on the Lin family. The night wind was strong, and their tiles were falling off with a loud bang. As soon as the dog in the backyard barked, it fell silent. That night, the watchman did not come to sound the gong. That night, their family even had 108 eggs just laid by the chicken, and the yolks were shaken loose. Family is ruined, family wealth is scattered, bodies are abandoned in the wilderness. Lin Jiu was reborn with a borrowed corpse. Seeing this, he couldn't help but feel a sense of resentment in his heart. He was sullen and didn't want to express himself. He blurted out a harsh sentence. County magistrate thief, sooner or later Lin Jiu will lose your ancestors for 18 generations. After this harsh sentence was spoken, most of the resentment in his heart dissipated. Lin Jiu estimated that he would wait for the loss of the county magistrate's ancestors for 18 generations before his resentment would dissipate and he could be considered reborn. In a blink of an eye, he understood his predecessor and felt waves of delicate and sharp whispers in his mind, as if tempting and maddening. The pain was even more intense than before, piercing into his brain like steel needles. At this moment, a bright light bloomed deep in Lin Jiu's mind, and a grand gateway appeared in his mind. The pillars on both sides of the gate are engraved with intricate and mysterious patterns, and some of the incomplete characters on the top of the gate are indistinguishable. leaving only a few dim patterns. He opened his eyes again and found that all kinds of eerie scenes had disappeared. He tried to push open the door with his mind, but found that it remained motionless. Golden Finger. Lin Shou had an extra word in his heart. He had read all kinds of novels in his past life, and he couldn't help but know that a traveler must have a golden finger. No matter how hard they tried, the door remained unchanged, and the surrounding environment became increasingly gloomy. The crow flew back and looked coldly at Lin Shou. Gaga. The crow's chirping sounded, and Lin Shou trembled as he looked at the gloomy environment around him. Ignoring his recent experience, he endured the pain in his brain and walked towards the foot of the mountain outside the mass grave. His stomach was growling, and Lin Shou thought of finding some wild fruits to fill his stomach first. This body had been thrown away for more than a day, and his internal organs had been twisted into a ball due to hunger. If he didn't eat any more, he might not have become the first starving traveler. All the way down the mountain, at the foot of the barren mountain, Lin Shou leaned against a tree and ate some wild fruits that had fallen on the ground and been eaten by animals. He didn't know what kind of wild fruit it was, chewing on the slightly bitter and sweet bark of the tree, and secretly pondered in his heart. This world is very similar to the end of the last dynasty in the previous life, but the pattern is different by 108,000 miles. Demons and monsters actually exist. Hee, I'm afraid I'll be killed again as a monster if I die and come back to life. Leaving through the memories in the original owner's mind, there are more historical backgrounds. As an 11 or 12-year-old boy, I don't know much, but I know that many taboos in this world can really kill people. Why don't we go back to the city first? As soon as this idea came out, it was rejected by him. Back to the city. Lin Shou looked at his thin arms and legs, afraid that as soon as his front foot entered, his back foot was caught and given to the county magistrate as a reward. Damn it, there are really immortal and Taoist priests in this world, and even foreign ghosts have the legendary magical fighting spirit. They may be recognized and resurrected by borrowing corpses when they go back, and burned by a fire. Lin Shou spat out the residue of the bark and thought about where to go in the future, suddenly feeling a darkness in front of him. Hee. In a daze, I saw a pale old face with yellow teeth and a cold smile. At night. An unknown mountain. The mountain is towering, with ancient trees towering in the sky, the moon bright and stars sparse, and black magpies flying south. A Taoist temple was established in the dark and sunken area of the mountain. The Taoist temple shimmered with dim yellow flames, illuminating the geometrically closed paper figures in the hall. Coupled with the roar of wild beasts outside the temple, it had an indescribable strangeness. At this moment, in the side hall of the Taoist temple, Lin Shou opened his eyes and turned his hair to feel a person lying next to him. Upon careful observation, it was lifeless and clearly a female corpse. Lin Shou was shocked and immediately flipped over to sit up, but a hoarse and elderly voice came from the palace door. "Little one, are you awake? Hee, what a pair of skin bags. Let's see how our craftsmanship is." Lin Shou's panic expression didn't disappear. Looking at him, he saw an old man in a shabby Taoist robe, playing with a paper figure in his hand. Looking carefully, he saw that it was exactly the same as the female corpse on the cold couch, even the delicate face of the dead. Lin Shou let out an ugly smile at the corner of his mouth, unable to tell that the person in front of him was an evil person. He opened his mouth and said, "Old immortal, your technique is the only one in the world. You're a clever little beast." The old Taoist snorted and cursed, then ignored him and began to draw strange characters on the paper figures and corpses. Lin Shou dare not act recklessly, but he is very careful about the strange Taoist's movements. The old Taoist used some unknown blood as ink, nails as pens, and every character on the paper figure exuded evil energy. Lin Shou's mind was almost hooked by that character. "If you keep watching, you'll be dead. Hee, this spiritual energy can be refined into a top-notch zombie even if you die." Lin Shou's body trembled suddenly, and he regained his senses, unable to contain his fear in his heart. Listening to what the old Taoist said, if he continued to watch, he couldn't say that his life was in danger. The other person's reminder actually saved him. Lin Shou had a clever mind and suddenly guessed that the old Taoist didn't bring him back to take his life. The stone in his heart fell. Seeing Lin Shou regain his composure, the old Taoist gave a gloomy smile and continued to draw the ghost talisman in his hand. Then Lin Shou heard a sound of possessed spirit, wake up, and the paper figure in front of him seemed to have been endowed with flesh and blood, with a flexible body shape and no longer stiff. The old Taoist saw that he had become a masterpiece in one go, and his mood was already extremely good. He opened his mouth and said, "In the future, you will follow us to fight. If you dare to run away, we will refine you into a living corpse." Upon hearing these words, Lin Shou's face appropriately showed a look of fear and continued, "Serving the old immortal is an honor for a young man." Seeing Lin Shou's appearance, the old Taoist was somewhat satisfied and pointed to the corpse, hoarsely saying, "Bury this thing in the backyard of the Taoist temple. The pit you dug should be 4 feet and 4 inches deep. Tomorrow, we'll teach you some methods. He 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 he. Otherwise, you'll be deceived by something outside one day." After speaking, the old Taoist walked into the back hall with the paper figure. Lin Shou nodded and said yes. Seeing the old Taoist walking into the back hall without any movement, the door in his mind remained motionless and he let out a sigh. Xuanqi picked up a shovel at hand and carried the body towards the backyard of the Taoist temple. Lin Shou didn't know yet that this body had been carried for 8 years. As the saying goes, "For 8 years, I have been a guest under the fence of others, sweeping the air alone and contemplating. For the first time in an unfamiliar place, I often miss my old hometown. Time flies and we look for it, the leaves in the forest are green and yellow. When will the Dharma come to an end? I will sing for eternity." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Legacy of the Old Way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Legacy of the Old Way. The morning light is slightly dewy, and the old crow is returning to its nest. After a busy night, Lin Shou finally dug the pit. This is individual labor. The old Taoist requires the burial pit to be 4 feet and 4 inches deep, which translates to over 1 meter. After wiping his sweat, Lin Shou gently placed the body beside him into the pit. The female corpse's eyes were slightly closed, and her eyelashes trembled with the wind, as if she could open them at any moment. Before digging, she didn't feel it, but now staring at the exquisite dead face, Lin Shou's heart was filled with panic. "I'm letting you settle down in the dirt now. Even if you don't count your merits, you have to bear in mind my hard work. We have no grievances or grudges. If there is any retribution, go find that old Taoist." The divine nagged for a while, and Lin Shou began to shovel soil and fill the pit. Filling in the last pile of soil, Lin Shou pressed it down with a shovel, afraid that the thing inside would break through and come out. "I've buried it all, what kind of things are these?" Lin Shou hadn't finished talking about it when he noticed a figure appearing at the corner of his eye and quickly changed his mind. This matter has been done, and he finally lived up to the old immortal's instructions. The old Taoist stood in front of Lin Shou, holding a white-boned fox beard and brushing the dust, with a gloomy expression on his face, accompanied by a sneer of "he he he." Lin Shou's scalp tingled when he saw this face, and he thought to himself that he would find a way to escape when his golden finger activated. With a mournful expression, he held up a shovel and said, "Old immortal, I have buried the body." The old Taoist let out a cold snort, and with a flick of dust, the mound of buried corpses immediately became flat. "Follow me." The old Taoist walked quickly into a side hall, and Lin Shou dared not think too much and followed suit step by step. In the side hall, there was a pair of skeletons hanging on the surrounding walls, and Lin Shou couldn't distinguish which species it was in shape, but fortunately there were no human bones in it. The old Taoist brought a pot of rotten meat and said in a deep voice, "Stinky kid, eat it." How much you can eat depends on your luck. Lin Shou looked at the rotten meat in the bowl and thought about the old Taoist's evil ways. Suddenly, his heart pounded. This can't be white meat, right? Smelling the aroma of meat coming from the pot, Lin Shou didn't eat for 2 days and nights, and worked hard all night digging a pit. His saliva was almost flowing out of his mouth. The old Taoist's eyes were sinister, and he could tell what Lin Shou was thinking at a glance. He turned around and picked up a half-animal corpse from under the desk, throwing it in front of Lin Shou. "Little beast, are you still afraid that I won't give you white meat?" The corpse had a head like a horse, horns like a deer, a neck like a camel, and a tail like a donkey. Anyway, it was not a human. Lin Shou suddenly felt relieved and buried his head, stuttering and eating. The taste is average, Lin Shou couldn't help but think of it. A pot of meat, Lin Shou won't leave any meat residue, and even looked up at the old Taoist. The meaning in his eyes was clearly asking, is there anything else? The old Taoist was surprised to see that Lin Shou had finished his meal, but looking at Lin Shou's pitiful eyes, he said angrily, "If you still want to eat, just make it yourself." Lin Shou's face lit up with joy, regardless of what the animal was, and he found an open space to start a fire and grill. There is no shortage of seasoning here, and Lin Shou's barbecue skills were also good in his past life. The aroma of the barbecue was overflowing, even the old Taoist swallowed his saliva. Lin Shou walked up naturally, respectfully handing over his plump leg and grinning, "Old immortal, you worked hard all night. It's your turn to enjoy it first. Hee, you're still a sensible kid." The old Taoist's smile was gloomy and terrifying, regardless of his mood. He took the grilled meat and slowly chewed it. Lin Shou took a deep breath, feeling that the pressure on his body had dissipated a lot, and continued to eat. After finishing the task, the old Taoist brought Lin Shou to the backyard. "There are quite a few dirty things in this mountain, and I'm afraid the old Taoist will collect your corpse one day when he comes back. He can eat so much meat that looks different. I think your young man has a good talent and is suitable for learning this side profession. Today, I'll teach you a spirit consciousness gathering technique. This spiritual consciousness gathering technique is a unique technique that does not require any teachings or a Taoist foundation for practitioners. It can be activated by burning essence and blood, and can greatly improve the physical fitness of the practitioner after being activated. The old Taoist said that this side magic is for Lin Shou to run away. Don't expect to rely on his body and those dirty things to work hard. Good cultivation, this spell burns the source of life. You can practice martial arts and condense essence and blood, so as not to be burned into dryness as soon as you cast the spell. The old Taoist threw down an ancient book, turned around and left. Lin Shou picked up the book and read it, the 9-Yang Manual. Half a month later, one night, the old Taoist brought back another corpse, which was dressed in embroidered dragon costumes and had a foul-smelling wound on its neck. "Wash this leather bag clean, I'm useful." Lin Shou covered his nose, gritted his teeth, and dragged the body to the backyard for cleaning. The old Taoist, like at that time, tied paper figures and drew talismans. "Soul possessed, rise up." The body remained motionless, and the paper figure remained unchanged. "Is this a failure?" He. The old Taoist gave a measured smile and remained silent. "Tomorrow, the Taoist will return this leather bag. You bury the paper man in the backyard." Oh. Another year later, Lin Shou discovered a surge of internal power in his body. According to the 9-Yang Manual, he had practiced this kung fu to the end and could be called a master in the human world. Lin Shou also learned 80% of the spiritual consciousness gathering technique. He used it once but couldn't stop, almost draining his entire body of essence. If it weren't for the Taoist's timely intervention, Lin Shou might have died. If you continue to be so reckless, you may die sooner or later. Why not let the old Taoist refine you into a living corpse? That killing intent was felt by Lin Shou for the first time, and he also knew that his so-called master was a joke in front of the old Taoist. He glanced at the door in his mind and guessed what was going on. It was even tighter than a widow's door. Lin Shou looked up at the sky and sighed, "It's so bitter." 3 years later, Lin Shou stepped out of the Taoist temple for the first time, but a black shadow walked towards him and asked, "Do you think I look like a god or a person?" Lin Jumian closed the door expressionlessly, and under the old Taoist smirk, he said, "Even if I die, I won't go out." 5 years later, the old Taoist taught him how to make paper figures. Lin Shou was very talented and the paper figures he made were lifelike. 8 years later Lin Shou placed the paper figures in the main hall and watched as the old Taoist had already walked away. I tried to push the door with my mind again, but remained motionless. Lin Shou's heart was filled with anger. He had thought that when his golden finger could be used, he would fly away, but it had been 8 years and he hadn't even pushed open a crack. For the past 8 years, Lin Shou has been trembling with fear every day, afraid of being accidentally refined into a living corpse. These 8-year-old Taoists have brought back a dead body from somewhere every 2 weeks. Some carry blood, some carry mud, some are from the great Xian kingdom, and some are foreign devils. When they come back, they will be asked to clean them up and raise spirits. In these 8 years, he saw the old Taoists succeed once, and those who did not succeed were told to bury them back, with paper figures buried in the backyard. Not to mention anything else, this old Taoist does things quite authentically. After tidying up, Lin Shou sorted out the things in the Taoist temple and sat in the main hall, gazing at the sky, sulking at the motionless gate in his mind. 8 years later, on a certain night, the old Taoist was panting heavily, with his robe torn and his whole body covered in blood. "Little beast, come here, kneel down and kowtow 3 times, serving tea." Looking at his miserable situation, Lin Shou knew that the old Taoist's life was not long, and he didn't hesitate to accept him as his disciple. He suddenly kowtowed 3 times. "Master, you have tea." The old Taoist took a sip and spoke again, "From now on, you will be called Lin Shou." Lin Shou nodded, "How could we not have any emotions after 8 years of being together?" At this moment, his face was full of sadness. "Master, I don't know your name yet. Who injured you?" "My name is also Lin Shou, and they recognize that the one who hurt me has already died. Come forward now." The old Taoist pointed his index finger towards Lin Shou's forehead, and Lin Shou felt a daze as he lit up a walking lantern in front of him. Infinite information poured into Lin Shou's mind like a flood, eventually converging into 2 big characters. The Shou Jing. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Cost Transfer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Cost Transfer. Lin Shou seemed to go back 8 years ago, seeing the door in his mind for the first time, and he felt his brain trembling. This outsider's power is infinite and comparable to that of a deity. He, what's ridiculous is that he can't live forever, it's ridiculous. I have left you 3 life-saving spells, but if you use them, they will be gone. Also, you can't bear this Taoist temple. Just come back and burn paper for the old Taoist when you have time. Hurry up and get lost. The old Taoist wanted to bend his finger and lightly flick Lin Shou's forehead, but then he was powerless to lower his arm. Suppressing the piercing pain in his mind, Lin Shou's body underwent some changes. Before he could even examine it, he found that his master had lost his energy and spirit, and his heart felt inexplicably sad. Stepping forward to close his eyes, he saw a stack of ghost coins still in his pocket and lost his voice, saying, "Master is quite fond of money. I'll burn it for you tonight." Lin Shouhua spent half an hour digging a pit in a precious piece of land in the backyard and burying an old Taoist. A monument was erected with the words, "Tomb of Lin Shou," written on it. Looking at his name on the tombstone, Lin Shou set up a fire basin and set fire to the pit coin. However, as soon as the pit coin was burned, it appeared on the side. Lin Shou still doesn't understand. Before this old man leaves, he brings back a pile of dead money. The dead man's money brought back by the old Taoist is not just the ordinary family's burning of the underworld coins to the ancestors. After passing down the tradition, Lin Shou couldn't help but know that this dead man's money was a benefit of the old man's collection of some strange things, and he wanted to do things for him. Afterwards, burn the dead person's money to exchange for one's own merits, but if it can't be burned. This money cannot be burned, which means that the matter has not been completed. Now that Lin Shou has taken over the cause and effect of the old Taoist, the dead man's money naturally belongs to him. Things that even the old Taoist couldn't accomplish, and it's even possible that the old Taoist died here. Lin Shou's hands were trembling as he held the dead man's money. Although the old Taoist cleaned all the things that hurt him before his death, the things that gave him money were still alive. What an old thing. If you die, then you'll die. Leave me such a big trouble, sigh. Lin Shou glared at the tombstone and cursed, then sighed with a sad expression on his face. However, he didn't have any really strange thoughts in his heart. If he had taken this name, he wouldn't regret encountering these things. At this moment, Lin Shou realized that the gateway in his mind had undergone some kind of change. The intricate patterns on both sides of the portal shimmered with light, and two patterns lit up on the portal, one with half-open and half-closed eyes, and the other with two intertwined thin lines. It seems that after changing its name to Lin Shou, the tightly closed door slowly cracked open a gap. Lin Shou pushed it open with his mind and found that the entire door was actually opened, but behind it was empty and empty. Just now, he also understood that the power of pushing open the door was called merit. The reason why he couldn't shake this door at all before was because Lin Jiu had no merit in him. Now that we have inherited the cause and effect of the old Taoist, and the other party's merits have also been transformed into our own, only then can we open this door. But looking at the emptiness behind the door, Lin Shou's face looked a bit ugly, but fortunately he quickly understood the true function of this golden finger. The eyes above the door have the ability to explore everything, and those two intertwined thin lines represent the ability to transfer extraordinary costs to others. Exploring and transferring costs both require merit, but Lin Shou estimates that the merit passed down from the old Taoist's lineage will not be used up for a while, so there is no need to worry for now. After inheriting the legacy of the old Taoist, Lin Shou also gained a preliminary understanding of this world, which contains powerful creatures that ordinary people cannot imagine. But the main body of this world still revolves around humans as the protagonist, facing so many powerful beings, and humans also have their own extraordinary systems. The extraordinary system of Zhongtu Daqian is mainly based on Taoism, and Taoist practitioners can only practice after receiving teachings. At the same time, it is mixed with other immature extraordinary paths such as Confucianism, Taoism, military, and legalism. It has also been heard that there are magicians, fighting warriors, and sorcerers in the West. These practitioners are the right path, while Lin Shou's practice is not the right path, but rather a side path. He has always been known for his powerful techniques and high cost. The more powerful the extraordinary power of this world is exerted, the stronger the cost it bears, especially for those who rely on unconventional means. Although practicing the righteous path may be slow, the cost of exerting extraordinary power is also lower, and more importantly, one can achieve immortality. Even the lowest level cultivators have a much longer lifespan than ordinary people, and high-level cultivators can sit and watch the sea wither and the rocks crumble. However, none of the outsiders could survive, as if they had been cursed. The old Taoist's lament before his death still lingered in Lin Shou's ear. At the same time, there are many eerie things in this world that may gain supreme power upon contact, but are more likely to come with unknown terrifying costs. In the inheritance left by the old Taoist, it was mentioned that there is a strange thing called Dragon Ball, which can be transformed into a demon dragon that can move clouds and rain and control thunder after being swallowed by ordinary people. But its price is to lose all concepts related to human beings, and eventually turn into an emotionless thunder, flickering before dissipating in the world. These strange things are not many in this world, but they are definitely quite a few. The most terrifying thing about them is the word unknown. You don't know what price you will pay if you use or encounter these things. But how should this function be used? Lin Shou was a bit puzzled, and the remaining light in his eyes caught sight of the dead man's money placed aside, so he had a plan in his mind. Just as Lin Shou touched the dead man's money, words like this appeared in his heart. Dark money, Dao belongs to a mysterious object, Dao Shu. The intermediary used by ghosts for trading contains cause and effect and merit. By resolving the cause and effect, one can obtain the merit contained above. Cause and effect do not dissipate, and the money of the underworld does not go away. The dowry of the Black Stone Mansion, the daughter of the Ling Luo Ghost King, to complete the promotion of yin and yang, was given by an old Taoist who wanted to eat black, but passed away halfway through. Now, cause and effect are entangled with his inheritor. Cost. Chasing souls in the underworld, for generations to come. After digesting the information in front of him, Lin Shou was somewhat stunned. He now roughly knows the function of his golden finger, no wonder this paper money cannot be burned. It turned out that the old Taoist wanted to eat black, so naturally there was no cause and effect, but now it is not settled and cannot be burned. Lin Shou took the name of the old Taoist and naturally took on this cause and effect. Unless he married the Ling Luo female ghost king or one of them completely disappeared, the money from the underworld would continue to haunt him. And the ghost king getting married and completing yin and yang is not a good thing for the living, it will kill the dead. If you're lucky, maybe you can leave a residual soul as a toy for the female ghost king. I said, old man, why did you leave me such a big trouble? That's the ghost king. Why don't you just take me down when you leave? Lin Shou looked at the old Taoist's tomb with a displeased expression. The brazier in front of the tomb was still burning yellow paper money, and the flames carried the burnt ashes. On one side, Lin Shou tied the paper figure with his own hands against the tombstone, wearing the same gloomy smile as the old Taoist priest. You still have a smile on your face. If you live, you like to mess with me. Even if you die, you won't make me better. Lin Shou muttered to himself, squeezing the money tightly in his hand. He walked up to pick up the paper figure and prepared to burn it together to send to the old Taoist. At this moment, a line of text appeared before Lin Shou's eyes. Is the cost transferred signed, change status tomorrow, investment brothers, hurry up, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Paper Man is also a human. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Paper Man is also a human. Lin Shou held the money in his left hand and stared at the paper figure in his right hand, his mind filled with mysterious characters of the evolution of the portal. Is the cost transferred, huh? It's not that the cost can be transferred to other people, but paper people are also human beings. Lin Shou stared suspiciously at the paper figure in the shape of the old Taoist, and his thoughts flickered in his heart. The two intertwined fine line patterns on the door suddenly shone brightly in his mind. The cost has been transferred in Lin Shou's eyes, a faint and imperceptible light transferred from himself to the paper figure. Lin Shou's heart suddenly relaxed, as if some invisible pressure had disappeared. When he turned his head to look at the paper figure in his hand, transparent text reappeared in front of him. In Paper Man Dao belongs to a mysterious object, Dao Shu. A paper figure woven with the technique of defying the heavens can be used in conjunction with various secret techniques, with infinite potential. If the material is not ordinary, it can only be retained for 1 month, otherwise it will be the most suitable creation for eerie possession. Cost. None. Transferred cost. Chasing souls in the underworld, for generations to come. Underworld money, paper binding technique, Dao belongs to. Misery, Dao Shu. Gather the yin and qi of heaven and earth into blood, condense the essence and chi of paper people into bones, seize and transform the divine energy into soul, and have the same position as a real person. Cost. Yin prospers and yang declines, making it difficult to engage in sexual activity. Has the cost really shifted? But, old man, I knew you had ulterior motives and wanted me to not take action. I wonder why you've lost all your craft jobs in these years. Lin Shou angrily punched the paper man in the face, and the paper man turned around and returned to his original appearance. The old Taoist's gloomy smile made Lin Shou seem to hear his signature, he laughter again. However, Lin Shou thought for a moment and stared at the paper man with wide eyes, saying, "Can the cost be transferred to the paper man? Can the cost of the paper tying technique be transferred to the paper man?" Lin Shou immediately found the second paperman, who was introduced exactly like the first paperman except for, note. A thought in my heart moved, and an invisible stream of light moved from the second paper figure to the first one. Subsequently, Lin Shou looked at the first paper figure, and the content on it indeed changed. In addition to the information on the money, there are two additional notes. Note 1. Dark money, the cost has been transferred. Note 2. Yin paper man, the cost has been transferred. Note 3. Excessive causal tolerance can only be retained for 15 days. Amazing, amazing. Lin Shou felt a fever under his body and seemed to have a tendency to develop again. This was precisely because he got rid of the cost of the paper tying magic and returned what should have belonged to Lin Shou. It is said in ancient times that there is a technique of rotation, and my capital is not inferior to that of AI. After tying up his pants and belt, Lin Shou nodded with satisfaction, able to transfer the cost. Isn't it not that many unconventional techniques can be used to his heart's content? Even immortality. As for paper figures, they cannot bear too much cost, otherwise they will disappear prematurely. Lin Shou said, "Is that a thing? I have learned how to make paper figures in these 8 years, and it's not a problem to make 180 paper figures a day." As for the Ghost King, Lin Shou fought against the Ghost King. With the golden finger, it's hard to talk. If you're afraid of a small ghost, it's really a shame for Lin Shou's inheritance and cheating. Satisfied, Lin Shou clapped his hands and walked to a side hall with the paper figure of the old Taoist. Inside, there was a dense yin energy, and the temperature inside was several degrees lower than outside. Inside are all the materials used by the old Taoist to awaken spirits, and he never allows Lin Shou to enter. Only after inheriting from the old Taoist did Lin Shou know what kind of cult things were inside. 10-year-old ghost wood, 100-year-old zongzi, 1,000-year-old poisonous spider are common in the hall, as well as all kinds of weird body materials. Searching inside the hall, Lin Shou wanted to find some useful things. A flesh-colored pocket that looks almost identical to human skin in terms of material. Lin Shou saw that the old Taoist had used it before and called it a human race bag. Its name has its own intricacies, but the things inside are somewhat abstract and intangible. There is a name that everyone covets. Shou Yuan. Gently touching, Lin Shou saw information about the race bag in front of him. Dao Gui. Race bag Dao belongs to. Giki Dao Shu. Collect the skin on the temples of 100 male infants born on the day of the Yang year, month, and Yang day, and use the silk thread spit out by the longevity goo to create a magical treasure that has the function of storing longevity energy and gathering Yang energy. If combined with the human fetal bag, it can produce an external body with a natural Dao body. Cost. Excessive Yang energy makes it difficult to reach the end when Yin and Yang intersect. What the hell is the price? It's just a miracle medicine. Lin Shou picked up the bag and shook it slightly, realizing that there were quite a few Shou Yuan in it. He chuckled foolishly at the paper figure, "My good master, you left me a good treasure. You should know that many methods on the side of the road require sacrificing one's lifespan. Although Lin Shou can transfer the cost, no one wants to live long. Moreover, Shou Yuan is the most valuable hard currency in the extraordinary world. Moreover, this treasure can also become an external incarnation, and Lin Shou naturally gladly accepted such good things. I don't know how many heinous things this old man did before collecting these Shou Yuan. Despite that, Lin Shou wished he could tie the race bag between his legs so that yang energy could have a more direct impact, and then look down at the next item. A short sword made of 12 copper coins and made of gold thread. Lin Shou immediately smiled happily, with the corners of his mouth even turning to his ears. Good baby. Good baby. The pattern of half-open and half-closed eyes lit up, and information about the copper coin sword naturally appeared in Lin Shou's eyes. Lingqian sword Dao belongs to Dao Tools Dao Shu. A magical treasure crafted with the help of Yin Thunder, using 12 spirit coins and refined gold thread, possessing unpredictable supernatural powers and destructive damage to ghost bodies and earth gods. Cost. None. Lin Shou placed his short sword horizontally in his palm and couldn't stop looking at it. This copper coin is not simple, it's called spirit money, a currency commonly used in the extraordinary world. One coin can be exchanged for a small city. Lingqian itself can also be used as a magic weapon, with infinite power. However, this is the first time that Lin Shou has seen such extravagance, and he directly uses the treasure money as a magic weapon. Adding a spirit coin to a regular magic weapon is enough, which is simply extravagant to waste. What a waste. It's just a waste. So much money is enough for both of us to live a good life together. How could you risk your life outside? Sigh. Lin Shou sighed and shook his head, while fiercely inserting his short sword into the strap. With this sword, Lin Daoren can easily solve the problem of the mere Ghost King. Afterwards, Lin Shou rummaged through the interior of the main hall again, putting useful items into his arms one by one. These were all left by the old Taoist, and Lin Shou naturally wouldn't refuse. But after taking 6 or 7 treasures, the entire hall shook violently, and Lin Shou finally understood that the old man had set up a backhand to avoid Lin Shou relying too much on external objects. Boom boom. The main hall fell into the ground, leaving only a large pit in place, and the many eerie things that could potentially poison the world disappeared without a trace. Shit, stingy old man. It seems that he has already had the idea of passing on my mantle. Why are you still treating me with such a vicious attitude? I knew he wouldn't have scolded you a few words in his heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Shanxia Post Station. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Shanxia Post Station. Sunrise in the east, with a faint morning dew. Although the old Taoist has passed away, the remaining power remains. Last night, as usual, he remained calm. Lin Shou took care of everything in the Taoist temple and lit a stick of incense for the old Taoist before leaving. Lock the gate of the Taoist temple, and Lin Shou looked up at the gate. This is the second time in 8 years that he has stepped out of the gate of the Taoist temple, and everything has changed. Old thing, I will come back to see you. Lin Shou looked solemnly at the dilapidated Taoist temple chief, his eyes filled with melancholy. People are not plants and trees, who can be ruthless. Lin Shou had long regarded the old Taoist as his own family. Now that there are no people in this world who are bound by him, he couldn't help but sigh, ha ha ha, I'm free now. Lin Shou was wearing an old and ill-fitting Taoist robe, humming a popular tune from his past life. He picked up his backpack and carried it behind him. He picked up an oil paper umbrella on the ground, shook the dust, and caught it under his armpit. The wind blew under his feet, and he strode down the mountain like a floating person. As he walked along, Lin Shou suddenly noticed a feeling of depression in his chest, stuck in front of him and unable to vent. With a slight frown and a mental shift, Lin Shou also understood that he had the ability to seek revenge now, and the resentment left by his original body had not dissipated. It seems that only by defeating the county government's family and throwing them to ashes can we alleviate this depressive aura. Lin Shou let out a mouthful of turbid air, quickened his pace, and understood the destination he was going to now. Although Lin Shou's martial arts skills can be called a master in the world, and he is also the first person to attack cities and pull out strongholds in the army, he is careful step by step in this forest, only daring to take advantage of the rising sun to retreat and quickly descend the mountain. After all, in terms of cultivation, Lin Shou has not yet achieved any accomplishments, and there are quite a few strange things on this mountain. Even though Lin Shou has some means, using them here may not be worth it. This time, Lin Shou went down the mountain with a purpose in mind. You should know that there is still a resentment in his chest that has not dissipated. This time, he needs to help this skin bag understand the cause and effect. The chair was on a towering ancient tree, and Lin Shou looked up at the sky. The mist was about to dissipate, and sunlight passed through the gaps in the tree crown, forming columns of light. Lin Shou lowered his head to look at the map, which was made of sheepskin and looked a bit old, with unclear markings on it. I didn't go wrong, did I? After looking for a long time, Lin Shou's eyebrows furrowed deeper and deeper. He decided to turn the map upside down and take a look. After a while, Lin Shou flipped the map back. I'm right. Is that just a cover-up? After some thought, Lin Shou flipped his hand like a magic and created a small jade bottle. He poured 1 or 2 drops of liquid into his palm, and his fingers touched his eyelids. At the same time, information about the liquid just used also appeared in front of Lin Shou's eyes. Yellow bull tears. Dao belongs to a mysterious object. Dao Shu. A yellow ox will only shed tears once in its lifetime, and even more so for a telepathic old yellow ox. Killing its cub or owner in front of the telepathic old yellow ox causes them to shed tears, and after shedding tears, they will die. Tears have the ability to detect illusions and temporarily enable the mortal body to see ghosts and gods. The intensity of the effect depends on the degree of the old ox's grief. Cost. The telepathic old ox has left its spirituality and residual soul in its tears. After use, it will cause a part of its body to transform into a bull-like state, and the duration is related to the degree of grief that the old ox depends on. This can be considered a collateral item that can be used by ordinary people, but it comes at a cost. Lin Shou took out the old Taoist paper figure, and the intertwined thread flickered to transfer the cost. The nose of the old Taoist paper man surprisingly changed into the shape of a scalper's nose. Lin Shou couldn't help but laugh and said, "Hee, cow nose old Taoist, but is that so?" Lin Shou couldn't help but learn the laughter of the old Taoist. After laughing, he waved his sleeve and put the paper figure back into the world. This was the last treasure that Lin Shou had. Qianquan's sleeve. Dao belongs to Geeky Dao Shu. A magic weapon crafted from the scales and space stones shed by the Mirage Dragon in the void of devouring inflammation, with the ability to store items. The stronger the user's magic, the greater their storage space. Even if there is no magic, there is still room for one side. Cost. Mirage dragons never remain stationary. They love to constantly sway and hover, forming beautiful dreams. Users have a chance of being dragged into Mirage Dragon's dreams, and perhaps they will sink forever from then on. At this point, someone wanted to ask why Lin Shou still carried a package on his back with the Qianquan sleeve. Lin Shou said that it was more immersive. Putting away the small jade bottle, Lin Shou's vision also changed. In front of me, there is a dense forest of old mountains extending into the distance. After a circle of old trees, there is a smooth road ahead. Lin Shou walked over at a leisurely pace, crossed the confusing illusion, and a different scenery appeared before his eyes. A post station is built along the mountain, with a courtyard surrounded by 3 or 5 small houses. One of them emits cooking smoke, and people wearing cloth clothes shuttle between the small houses carrying hot food. Under the 2 Shanghai gate railing, 4 areas were marked for parking carriages, each with a carriage parked. The groom's door was filled with bowls of food and occasionally jokes about meat. Seeing Lin Shou walking over, the grooms quickly put down their dishes and warmly greeted him. "Sir, where are you going?" "I'll pay based on the distance, it's absolutely fair. However, you have to bring your own dry rations." Lin Shou saw a living person other than an old Taoist for the first time in 8 years. He had seen nothing but dead skin lying still before, and now he was curious. He asked, "Brother, what's the price of going to Huashui County?" "Huashui County? That's 220 miles, right? I'll take you 700 Qianbao banknotes." A man with a dark face and a thin body said. "Oh, it's so far." Lin Shou muttered to himself. He didn't expect the old Taoist to bring him back from the chaotic burial mound in Huashui City, which was over 200 miles away, overnight. It's really not close to go back now. The dark man thought that Lin Shou felt expensive and said, "If the customer feels expensive, they can wait for 1 or 2 days. If 3 or 5 people come along, the price can be cheaper for you." Lin Shou tilted his head to look at the other 4 people, and the few men also chuckled. Obviously, their prices were uniform and there was no possibility of price suppression. Lin Shou was a bit embarrassed. Apart from a few grains of gold and silver, there were only a few hundred precious coins left on his body, all of which had been peeled off from those stinky skin bags over the years. It was difficult to estimate the value of gold and silver and it was inconvenient to use them here. He also didn't want to wait for others to travel together. At this moment, one of the men with a slightly fair complexion spoke in a muffled voice, "I happen to be on a trip to Huashui City. I'm leaving today and I'll take you 300 treasure coins." The other few men looked unhappy, and they also saw that Lin Shou didn't want to go with others. This order was clearly profitable. But at present, Lin Shou couldn't say much due to the friendship he had with his head down and not looking up. He let out a soft snort and each of them returned to the carriage, holding on to their food and gasping for breath. Lin Shou wiped away the yellow ox tears from his eyelids, tugged at the corner of his mouth, and nodded, saying, "That's best. Could you please, brother?" The man returned to the carriage and pulled the reins stiffly. The old horse reluctantly dragged its hooves away from the parking spot. "Come up, guests," the man said in a slightly dry voice. "Okay." Lin Shou picked up his package, jumped onto the carriage, lifted the curtain, and sat inside. "Let's go, horse, let's go." Da-da-da-da, with the rhythmic sound of horse hooves, the carriage disappeared from the sight of the other grooms. Is old Chen following the rules or not? The men are cursing and cursing, and their entire family relies on their passenger transportation to make a living. If they earn less, their children will eat less. Isn't that right? Wait, isn't that guy Lao Xie? What? Isn't his name Lao Wang? The last tall and thin groom rolled his Adam's apple and said, "There are only 4 people at our station. Where did the 5th carriage come from?" Cold sweat oozed from behind the coachman, and when they turned around, the 4 carriages were no different. There was no place for the 5th carriage to stop. Looking into the distance, it was already foggy at some point, and there were no horse hoof or wheel marks in the direction where Lin Shou had just left. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Ghost King Getting Married, Please Collect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Ghost King Getting Married, Please Collect. But it is said that Lin Shou sat on the carriage and walked through a lush mountain forest with the sound of horse hooves. I don't know when the fog in front of me became increasingly thick. It was already close to dusk, and coupled with the fog, the sky became increasingly dim. The coachman's face was somewhat pale and dull, lacking any radiance, which was normal. In today's chaotic world, only a few people can eat enough. Fortunately, these charioteers had official documents, which allowed them to exercise on official roads. Even so, most of the money they earned had to be handed over. Even being able to drive a carriage on the official road like this is a coveted profession for countless people, after all, there are no sheltered rural roads, and no one knows what demons and monsters there are. Nowadays, the people in Daqian are struggling to make a living, and most of them are hungry. However, these barren mountains and ridges are becoming increasingly lush. Lin Shou leaned against the window railing of the carriage, holding his chin in one hand and watching the outside scenery, as if his gaze had penetrated through the layers of mist and reached the distance. The other hand was playing with the spirit money sword, and the index finger skipped over one spirit money after another. "Brother, isn't he young enough to do this?" Lin Shou asked casually. The coachman was taken aback when he heard Lin Shou's inquiry, and then slowly replied in his slightly hoarse voice, "Probably. Probably 3 to 5 years. Oh. Only 3 or 5 years. How do I feel like your carriage has been around for decades or even centuries, and the wooden frames are all rotten." During his speech, Lin Shou held onto the railing he had just leaned against with one hand, which had decayed into a dead wood like a brand new railing before. The coachman heard Lin Shou's words and suddenly turned back to stare at him, his eyes bloodshot. He. The deception that can be easily broken by words, it seems that you are not the protagonist of this scene. Lin Shou finished with a light smile, and the entire carriage he made quickly decayed into a tattered carriage frame, as if it had experienced the acceleration of time. Several wooden frames were huddled together, seemingly about to fall apart, and the horse pulling the cart in front quickly turned into a skeleton. The coachman's body quickly became transparent, and his already pale face now became indistinguishable from that of a dead person. He let out a scream and his arms quickly turned into sharp bone claws, rushing towards Lin Shou. Lin Shou grinned and kicked on the buttocks of the horse skeleton in front, igniting a misty layer of blood light on his body, as fast as thunder and lightning. He flipped back and left 3 zhang away. The rotten carriage frame under Lin Shou's body was not so lucky, and now he completely died, becoming a pile of shapeless rotten wood. Lin Shou looked at the coachman in front of him who had completely transformed into a demon, but there was no fear in his heart. Instead, he was eager to try, knowing that the opponent's level was just a slightly more powerful and average fierce ghost than the lone soul wild ghost. Although ghosts of this level are capable of slaughtering a village, Lin Shouzhen, with his cheats and inherited skills, has nowhere to show his abilities. The demonized coachman let out a roar, and one arm turned into a huge ghost claw, grabbing Lin Shou. Lin Shou did not retreat but instead advanced. He raised his spirit money sword and a blood-red light burst out on his body, shattering the demon's ghost claws into fragments. The old Taoist taught Lin Shou 3 things in the past 8 years, one of which was the original 9-yang manual. It was considered a top-level martial arts skill in ordinary times and could also enhance one's own qi and blood. It was a great restraint against ordinary lonely souls and wild ghosts, but it was not enough to deal with the ghost soldiers who mastered magic in front of them. The second one is the magical technique of using paper, which, although infinitely useful, is of no use at this moment. The third one is the burst of blood light that Lin Shou himself emitted, which is one of the extraordinary martial arts techniques. The spiritual consciousness gathering technique can burn essence and blood to improve the physical fitness of the practitioner by several times. At the same time, the emitted blood light has a certain resistance to spiritual bodies and the like. Li Gui was greatly shocked, but quickly reacted. Its body flickered and turned into a black smoke, rushing towards Lin Shoufei. Lin Shou's eyes were slightly fixed, and he waved the spirit money sword in his hand, using the swordsmanship from the 9-yang manual to confront the enemy. When the Lingqian sword encountered the black smoke, it was like a hot knife encountering butter. Each swing of the sword could cut off a part of the black smoke and turn it into a black liquid, corroding the ground into a large pit. The ghost soldier knew it was invincible to Lin Shou. It opened its mouth and spewed out green poisonous gases, suddenly attacking Lin Shou. But at this moment, Lin Shou had the blessing of spiritual consciousness gathering technique, with a speed as fast as lightning. With a light tap on his toes, he easily dodged the poisonous gas and then stabbed the opponent's forehead with a backhand sword. The ghost soldier let out a mournful scream, shook his body a few times, and then turned into a black smoke that dissipated. Lin Shou held the spirit money sword and murmured to himself, "This ghost is not its key point." Suddenly, the mist in front of me became even more diffuse, so thick that I couldn't even see it clearly when I reached out. A bone claw under my feet stretched out from the ground, grabbed Lin Shou's ankle, and pulled him into the ground. As his body continued to fall, Lin Shou held the spirit money sword in his hand, but did not resist the opponent's behavior. Instead, he infused his own blood light into his body and closed the spirit consciousness gathering technique. The sense of weightlessness gradually stopped, and the mist in front of him slowly faded until it disappeared. Finally, Lin Shou could see the scenery in front of him clearly. A rudimentary mansion appeared in front of him, with blood-red lanterns hanging high on both door pillars. Looking further away, a series of black mountains extended like a tide towards the distance. It's like under these 1,000 mountains and peaks, there's only this mansion standing alone, with a big red lantern written with one happy word after another. The entrance of the mansion is half hidden, and the faded door god paintings on it are no longer very clear. In the crack of the door, there are people who overlap and hold plates or wine pots in each hand. Upon closer inspection, there were still dozens of people wearing fancy clothes inside, but they were kneeling in the center of the yard, trembling with fear, stuffing food into their mouths. The ghost soldier who had just been fighting with Lin Shou now transformed into the same honest middle-aged man with low eyebrows and pleasing eyes as before. I saw that the other party no longer entangled with Lin Shou, but quickly left and walked towards the mansion. Then, I bowed through the side door next to the gate and walked in, seemingly full of respect for the owner of the mansion. Lin Shou looked up at the pitch-black night sky above his head. Although it was already underground, he could see the night sky, but not a single star was bright. At this moment, what was supposed to be the first quarter moon has turned into the second quarter moon, dyed with a hint of blood red. It seems like there's a wedding happening here, so it's unlucky to go in with swords. Lin Shou smiled and tied the Lingqian sword in his hand around his waist, but inadvertently played 2 drops of yellow ox tears in his eyes. "I'm very tired after walking all day, so I happened to go in and ask for a cup of wedding wine to drink." As the words fell, Lin Shou lifted his foot and left. The mansion seemed to have a spiritual presence, and the dilapidated door creaked open automatically. At this moment, the sound of Suona sounded. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Hunger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Hunger. Just as Lin Shou stepped into the gate of the mansion, a poignant joy suddenly came to mind in the courtyard, which was the brilliant future commonly used by ordinary families for weddings. 2 rows of musicians wearing red clothes had pale faces, some playing gongs and drums, some playing suona, and the music was loud, as if opening the first scene of a grand wedding. If it were an ordinary person, they would not have entered this mansion at all, and upon entering this mansion, they would have fled upon hearing the eerie music. Lin Shou, however, felt like there was no one around, pushing in the crowd as if he was really coming to attend the wedding banquet. Strangely enough, there are many tables in the yard, but these tables are only half the height of regular tables, and guests are also kneeling on the ground to enjoy the food and drinks on the table. All the tables were filled with guests, but only the middle table had no guests, and that table was also of a normal height for people to use. The dishes on it were also the most abundant, all big fish and meat. "What's so polite about leaving me a whole table?" Lin Shou spoke politely, but his movements showed no signs of politeness. He quickly took a few steps and sat at the table. A servant-like woman floated over with a wine jug in her voice, saying in a cold voice, "This banquet has been waiting for the officials for 400 years. Why did the officials come at this time?" And an old man, who looked like a butler, greeted with a pale face, "The master has arrived, the banquet is open." Lin Shou said apologetically to the woman who was serving the wine, "There was some fog on the road and I couldn't find my way, so I arrived late." The butler chuckled and said, it's not a problem, you're not late. The maid who served the wine raised her eyebrows and eyes, poured Lin Shou a full cup of wine in her hand, and said, I still invite the officials to drink. After drinking 3 cups, my young lady will be willing to come forward. Lin Shou picked up his glass and drank it all in one gulp, with a sweet and refreshing taste. At this moment, the bands on both sides played Magpie, which was a piece of music from an ordinary family's wedding banquet and toasting, and now it is played in a mournful and melodious manner. Good wine, what's the point of drinking 3 cups? You'll have to drink 300 cups at once. The maid poured Lin Shou's wine again. Raise your glass, look up, and drink it all in one gulp. Again, Lin Shou drank and ran out. Just as Lin Shou was eagerly looking at the maid, she gently put down the wine jug, and naturally another servant came to take it away. How could I not bear to have a few glasses of wine? Lin Shou said with a smile. If officials want to drink alcohol, they will naturally not lack it in the future, but please meet my young lady first. The music reached its climax at this moment, and the musician drummed his cheeks and played hard. A red wedding dress suddenly appeared on the steps in front of Lin Shou, and the surrounding air seemed to cool down. The guests who were frantically stuffing food into their mouths also stopped moving, staring blankly at the owner of the red wedding dress, trembling. The other person's figure is tall and slender, exuding a cold and elegant temperament. The blood-colored skirt tightly contracts, perfectly outlining the curves on her body. The red veil obscured the other person's appearance, but one could vaguely see their facial features, and anyone had to say something about a lady from a wealthy family. The only thing that can be seen is her red lips, slightly upturned with a hint of pure white teeth exposed. Her hair is exquisitely coiled on her head covered in red gauze, and the red sand covers her shoulders, adding a touch of charm and elegance. The entire mansion suddenly fell silent, and everyone's gaze unconsciously shifted to the woman in the red wedding dress, or rather the female ghost. My body is full of silk. I have seen officials before. Why don't they touch the food and drinks on the table? Don't you think the food and drinks taste bad? The voice of the female ghost wearing a red wedding dress is cold and gentle, like the sound of a clear spring, and also like the sound of silk and bamboo pipe music. With just one short sentence, it has a soul-stirring effect. Lin Shou looked at the red dress in front of him, straightened the collar of his Taoist robe, and said with a smile, I am also hungry and want to have a big meal, but I can't stand this person's liver and gallbladder. I dare to ask the girl if she has any other delicious dishes. Or maybe the food. As the words fell, the large table of wine and food in front of Lin Shou suddenly turned into a foul-smelling organ of the human body, with a complete range of colorful categories, which were once again a deceitful barrier to truth. Lin Shou's teasing words immediately made the maid next to Ling Luo's face unhappy, and even a chilly aura appeared on her body. The ghostly aura directly dyed half of her body red, clearly indicating that the female ghost in front of her was a ghost general who had entered the realm. The guests who were kneeling in the courtyard were also panicked and uneasy, burying their heads deeply, stuffing their mouths with large mouthfuls of food that had already been offered in the original form of their organs. This scene was as eerie as a group of demons dancing and quiet. My concubine has been with such officials for 400 years. Why should the officials make such an impolite gesture? Is it difficult to break the engagement with my concubine? Ling Luo continued to speak, and a cold wind blew up her red veil, allowing Lin Shou to see half of the other person's face clearly. It was indeed a national and heavenly beauty. Oh, I'm so foolish. I forgot my engagement with the girl. Upon hearing the other person's words, Lin Shou slapped his forehead and said with a deliberately distressed expression, then took out a stack of paper money from his Taoist robe. Since we have made a marriage agreement, how can we reduce the amount of gift money? 3 betroths and 6 gifts are the only way to be considered a legitimate marriage. Now, everything is hastily simplified. A stack of paper money was exactly the underworld money that Lin Shou had obtained from an old Taoist before. The merit and causality contained above are exactly what ghosts need the most, which can improve their cultivation without any side effects. Therefore, all the gaze in the entire mansion shifted to the stack of underworld coins that Lin Shou had taken out. The maidservant and butler looked straight at them. If it weren't for Ling Luo still watching them from the side, she would have appeared in her original form and rushed over. Due to Lin Shou transferring the cause and effect of the underworld money, Ling Luo naturally couldn't recognize that this was the dowry she had given back then. Ling Luo's gaze also moved, obviously not expecting that Lin Shou could come out with such a thing. She gently outlined her lips and smiled, then nodded slightly. After receiving instructions from her master, the maid quickly walked to Lin Shou's side, took the stack of money into her arms, and respectfully handed it to Ling Luo. Ling Luo took it and the money was hidden in her skirt. She nodded slightly and said softly, "The officials are interested, but I still invite them to taste the dishes in front of me. These dishes are all carefully made by me. They can allow the officials to obtain the body of our holy clan and enter our clan before they can marry me." "Do you mean that only a poor person can marry you as a ghost?" Lin Shou looked surprised and even opened his mouth very cooperatively. "Nature," the maid said first. Lin Shou quickly shook his head and said, pretending to be foolish, "That's not fair. I'm dead and my roots are rotten. How can we have a 100-year relationship with your young lady? No fair, no fair." Ling Luo's expression remained unchanged, without paying attention to Lin Shou's vulgar words. She simply said, "If my husband refuses, I will have to offend you. With my husband's merits, I will leave you with complete spiritual intelligence. At that time, this Blackstone mansion will be at the mercy of my husband." "Pate. Who is your husband? You shameless silver woman, didn't I hit the nail on the head?" A puddle of saliva spat on the silk-embroidered shoes and then passed over. Ling Luo's face was gloomy, and the field suddenly felt a chill. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Help me enter the Dao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Help me enter the Dao. Lin Shou's move was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire, and the atmosphere at the scene suddenly fell to freezing point. The entire mansion was shrouded in a chill, and the temperature suddenly dropped to -0. Only Lin Shou's breath was present, with a hint of moisture. The already bright red wedding dress on Ayala's body is now filled with blood. This is no longer the color of the red wedding dress itself, but rather Ayala's anger, revealing her true body. The maid beside her had a fierce expression, half of her body stained with blood, with a blue face and fangs, and a terrifying demeanor. And the butler on the side did the same, revealing the true body of the ghost. Lin Shou's spitting action completely angered them, but Ling Luo had a sneer on her face, and the cold chill in her eyes was almost freezing Lin Shou. Why do officials make such an unreasonable appearance? You have already drunk the soul wine brewed from the water of the Styx River, and in just 2 or 3 hours, you will become the body of our holy clan. It would be better for officials to marry my concubine with peace of mind. The tone was very soft, but the threat inside and outside the words was very obvious. The blood on the maidservant and butler's bodies did not fade, but they obeyed Ling Luo's orders and did not act recklessly. They just stared at Lin Shou intently. If Lin Shou dares to do any more insulting behavior to their master like before, they will probably pounce directly and tear Lin Shou's body to pieces. Anyway, what their hostess needs is not Lin Shou's body in front of her, but a ghost. Even though he was stared at by these 3 terrifying ghosts, Lin Shou remained calm and shook his already clean glass. He said, "Let me tell you, there are only a few glasses of wine that you can see in your entire mansion. Even if that's the case, you're not willing to give me more. How could you treat guests like this? How about this? Give me 3 more glasses of wine, and I'll consider getting married." With Lin Shou's sarcasm, the maid and butler grinned again, but Ling Luo curled her lips and said, 3 cups of this soul-condensing wine is enough to make the official join our holy clan. But if the official likes it, how about letting the official drink a few more cups? Xiao Cui, pour the official some wine. The maid Xiaocui reluctantly restrained her demonic energy and her blood color faded, and she returned to her original appearance. Carrying a wine jug, he walked reluctantly to Lin Shou and mixed him with wine. For ordinary people, this soul wine is a deadly poison, but for ghosts, it is a rare supplement. Even if Ling Luo Goe, as the body of the Ghost King, leads a realm of the underworld, she can only obtain 3 pots every year. Now Lin Shou, who took 2 or 3 sips, drank half of 1 pot, which naturally made the maid known as Xiaocui feel a bit resentful. If it weren't for the big deal of her own owner, she wouldn't have wasted this thing on a living person. However, the thought of the other person taking the initiative to request a few more cups of soul-condensing wine means that the person in front of them won't take a few hours, but a few breaths will completely turn into a ghost body. Suddenly, Xiaocui's mouth curved with a few smiles. She knew that the person in front of her was just a sacrifice used by her own owner to complete the promotion ceremony. It is impossible to truly become the male owner of this haunted mansion. Once the master has finished using it, she can torture as much as she wants, and the anger she has suffered will be repaid 100 times. Please invite officials to drink alcohol. Upon smelling the wine in the cup, Lin Shou was overjoyed and drank it all in one gulp. He exclaimed, "It is truly a fine wine brewed from the water of the Styx River. The spiritual energy contained in it is truly abundant." Upon hearing Lin Shou's words, the maid Xiaocui sneered and said, "Officials really enjoy it, but I don't know if you can handle it anymore." The mockery in his words was obvious, but Lin Shou seemed to turn a deaf ear and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The pattern of the eyes and intertwined lines on the gateway deep in his mind suddenly lit up, and such words appeared in Lin Shou's heart. Soul-condensing wine Dao belongs to a mysterious object Dao Shu. The fine wine brewed from the water of the underworld contains some of the most fundamental spiritual energy from the birth of the underworld. For ghosts it is the best treasure to improve cultivation and offset the cost of magic, but for living humans, it is a deadly poison. The special true energy contained in it will corrode the body and turn it into a ghost body. Cost 1. Body decays and soul becomes ghostly. Cost 2. Being focused on by the will of the underworld. Is the cost transferred? Ling Luo had a faint smile on her face, as if she was already anticipating the future cultivation realm. At some point, Lin Shou's sleeve revealed a paper human head, which looked exactly like an old Taoist. Looking at the smile on Ling Luo's face, Lin Shou also chuckled lightly, with thoughts circulating in his heart. The 2 intertwined thin thread patterns on the portal in my mind suddenly burst into light. The cost has been transferred. The paper figure in the cups feels like it has gone through decades of time and gradually decays in its breath. On both sides of the mansion, joyful ghosts were playing, holding instruments and waiting for Lin Shou's body to turn into a puddle of mud. When the ghosts were reborn, they would play the final music of the wedding. But just as the ghosts and monsters playing with joy were preparing to play with their puffed cheeks, Lin Shou's body had not changed for a long time. If these ghosts and monsters were still alive, they would have been suffocated to death by the puffed cheeks. Even at this moment, there was a slight fluctuation in Ling Luo's eyebrows and eyes. She looked at Lin Shou with a cold gaze and realized something was wrong. The whole atmosphere suddenly quieted down, and everyone felt something was wrong, except for the weak ghosts still kneeling on the ground, constantly devouring their organs. The only sound left in the mansion was the sound of chewing. At this moment, Lin Shou seemed to have tasted the lingering charm of the wine and pulled out a paper figure of equal height from his sleeve. The paper figure looked exactly like an old Taoist. The old Taoist priest made of paper is lifelike, but the only difference is that his nose has turned into a scalper's nose. After the appearance of this paper figure, Ling Luo's expression suddenly changed. Her once beautiful face suddenly became terrifying and ferocious, with sharp ghost teeth constantly wriggling, transforming into a complete monster. Ling Luo almost roared and said, how could you have this old Taoist paper figure? It is obvious that Ling Luo is very wary of the old Taoist. She thought that Lin Shou was arranged by the old Taoist to marry her, and should be an ignorant substitute for the dead. But obviously, when Lin Shou took out the paper figure in the shape of an old Taoist, all of this was unfounded, and she instinctively felt that there was something suspicious in it. Lin Shou let out a drunken hiccup, and then the paper figure in his hand suddenly ignited a white flame. The flame was not hot, but instead caused the temperature on site to drop a bit again. The maid Xiaozui's gaze became slightly incredulous, as if she were a true human ignorant maid. She covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Underworld fire. No, how could it burn on this paper figure? Shouldn't it burn your body? Thank you to the Ghost King for giving me wine and helping me enter the path." Lin Shou allowed the paper figure in his hand to burn into ashes, and then scattered in the air. He smiled and arched his hand at the silk that had already revealed the original form of the ghost. Ling Luo's unease and irritability grew stronger in her heart. At this moment, she could no longer pretend, and her whole body was dyed red with blood. She flew over to Lin Shou and pinched his neck. Ling Luo hung Lin Shou in mid-air and asked, "Entering the Tao? No, impossible. How could humans rely on the spiritual energy in the water of the Styx River to enter the Tao? The cost contained in it is simply unbearable for humans. The paper figure of the old Taoist has been completely burned down by the fire of the underworld, leaving only sparkling light spots floating in the air." Ling Luo looked at the disappearing ashes before her and said thoughtfully, "Are you his disciple?" "No, even so, you can't have so much lifespan to burn and pay the price of the water in the underworld." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Please enter my belly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Please enter my belly. Lin Shou was pinched by the Ghost King's neck, and with just a little more force from the opponent, he could separate Lin Shou's body, but he was laughing. Although Ling Luo tightly grasped Lin Shou's neck, she had no intention of taking action because the recent incident had left her somewhat confused. She suddenly realized that the money she had given to the old Taoist had suddenly lost contact, and that kind of hidden connection could not dissipate unless her transaction was completed or one of the parties involved died. And now he clearly felt that the connection with the disappearance of the old Taoist paper figure had also disappeared. Schwa. Just as the female Ghost King was still pondering, Lin Shou had a dagger made of copper coins in his hand at some point. He placed the dagger on his chest and swung it, causing the female Ghost King's arm to be cut off in two. Even so, Ling Luo's palm still tightly strangled Lin Shou's neck, while Lin Shou calmly used the copper coin sword in his hand to cut open his palm. He also emitted a bloody light on his body, but it was different from the red light that showed strength on those ghosts and monsters. This was the spiritual consciousness gathering technique he launched. With the blessing of spiritual consciousness gathering technique on physical fitness, Lin Shou quickly distanced himself and dodged among the group of ghosts. The bloody light emanating from his body made those low-level ghosts who wanted to attack dare not approach. The dagger he just used was the spirit money sword, which was one of the treasures that Lin Shou took out from the old Taoist side hall. It had a devastating effect on the body of ghosts and the earth gods. Ling Luo is truly a ghost of the second realm. Even if she was injured by the spirit money sword, her face did not change much. The ghost aura permeated the wound, and a new arm quickly grew out. This is the most troublesome part of ghosts. They are almost immune to the damage of the vast majority of divine weapons and weapons. Even with weapons like the spirit money sword that can cause devastating damage, if they do not hit the opponent's core, it will not have a significant impact on their external transformed bodies. Lin Shou sorted out his somewhat messy Taoist robe, clasped the spirit money sword in his palm, and said with a smile on his face, "I thought I would use the old man's magic to inflict serious damage on you ghosts and refine them to obtain true energy, but I didn't expect to be able to drink something as good as condensing soul wine. I also need to thank the Ghost King for giving me wine to help me enter the Tao and control true energy." You were playing with me from the beginning. Upon hearing Lin Shou's words, Ling Luo calmed down and once again transformed into her beautiful and delicate appearance, her eyes slightly narrowed as she gazed at the Lingqian sword in Lin Shou's hand. She felt that the sword posed a great threat to herself, and at the same time, she heard Lin Shou mention that the old Taoist had left him 3 spells. The female Ghost King, who has made a deal with the old Taoist, is well aware of the terror of the other party. Even the 3 spells left behind have unpredictable power. If she is not careful, even she is likely to cheat. Hee. I didn't expect the officials to be the inheritors of that family, no wonder they can use Taoism without entering the country. But even if the old Taoist himself came to drink so much soul wine, without any effort, his body would rot and turn into ghosts. Unexpectedly, the officials used this as a means of enlightenment without any damage. The secret on their bodies made me even more curious. Lingluo's vermilion lips lifted lightly, and she spoke softly, with a hint of intimacy in her tone as if Lin Shou was really her fiancé, as if Lin Shou had just cut off one of her arms as if it had never happened. However, even if the officials have already entered the Tao and passed on the legacy of the old Taoist, they are still just a young child who has not even reached the first realm. Can they not achieve the goal of escaping from my concubine's hands? Xiaocui and Manager Liang, you can personally make the officials become the body of our holy clan. Ling Luo looked at Lin Shou with a smile on her face. Upon receiving Ling Luo's command, Xiaocui and the butler suddenly emitted a piercing red light, shrouded in ghostly aura, revealing their true form as ghosts, with a ferocious and terrifying demeanor. Just as the 2 fierce ghosts were about to pounce on Lin Shou grinned again, knowing that Ling Luo had sent these 2 fierce ghosts from the realm of ghost generals to lead the battle, because he was worried about the 3 Taoist techniques left by the old Taoist. Therefore, 2 ghostly generals were dispatched to explore the way, and it would be even better if they could trick that technique out. If what Lin Shou said about the 3 spells left by the old Taoist were just a bluff, why not kill Lin Shou and use some effort to transform him into a ghost? And all of this is in Lin Shou's calculations. If Ling Luo personally takes action, it will inevitably consume the magic left by the old Taoist. But if facing 2 ghost generals, Lin Shou can save it. After all, the spells left by the old Taoist can only be used once, and there are other ways to save them for future use. Lin Shou's eyes flashed with a brilliant light, and the newly acquired true energy was infused into the spirit money sword held in his hand. The originally ordinary spirit money sword now blooms with a golden light, and under the light, all evil spirits disperse. Lin Shou, who was hiding among the many weak little monsters, struck his spirit money sword in his hand. Many monsters around him suddenly let out a mournful scream, as if they had been hit by some catastrophic disaster. They all screamed and wanted to escape. Even those 2 ghost generals were forced back by the light, unable to make any progress for a moment, truly a treasure for restraining ghosts. At this moment, Lin Shou let out a cold drink, and the inheritance in his body finally opened its fangs. At the same time, the pattern of half-open and half-closed eyes on the Weian gate in Lin Shou's mind lit up again, and information floated in his heart, giving him a deeper understanding of the inheritance in his mind. Shou Jing Dao belongs to Dao Jing Dao Shi. The source of the unorthodox path and the sect of all laws in the world, originally a true Xianmen scripture, it transforms into the left path in the face of changes in heaven and earth, but its power remains, albeit at a high cost, and it is the last resort left behind by Dao. Description 2. Due to the changes in heaven and earth, practitioners are at odds with the righteous path. The way of cultivation is to refine essence and transform qi, refine qi and transform spirit, and refine spirit to counteract emptiness. Those who refine essence and transform qi refine the essence and monsters of the world. Those who refine qi and transform spirit refine the energy of all things. Those who refine spirit to counteract emptiness refine the gods of various realms can obtain side techniques, left path divine powers. Cost 1. Refining monsters, qi, and gods can all obtain lifespan. However, the longevity classic has no lifespan. Whether it is refining or using divine powers, it will consume lifespan, while the lifespan obtained by improving cultivation will be consumed by cost 2. Practitioners will be watched by unknown beings, and the decline of chi luck is often unlucky. Cost 3. After death, the soul returns to, without entering reincarnation. At this moment, Lin Shou's hands formed a magic seal, and a force of attraction arose. The ghosts and monsters weakened by the golden light of the spirit money sword were forcefully pulled towards the magic seal formed by Lin Shou. After drinking fine wine, how can I not have delicious food? I am also hungry, please wait for it to enter my stomach. A massive and terrifying pressure surged out, sweeping away many ghosts and demons around Lin Shou. Lin Shou laughed heartily and opened his mouth, swallowing all the ghosts with a wail. This movement, even the female ghost king in the second realm couldn't help but change her expression greatly. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Spell Autogenesis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Spell Autogenesis. But it was said that Lin Shou's spirit money sword, shining brightly, intimidated the ghosts, and his technique was like swallowing a whale. All the ghosts and monsters around him fled in a hurry, but they were like a broken boat falling into the horizon of a black hole, wanting to escape but unable to escape. In this state, those ghosts were unable to escape several meters around Lin Shou's body, transforming into a stream of light and entering his body. The true energy that the soul wine could originally provide was like a trickle, only able to activate the Dharma seal for Lin Shou. But as the ghosts transformed into streams of light and entered his body, the true qi in his body rapidly increased. Although the quality of the true qi transformed by these ghosts was not high, the number of ghosts and monsters around Lin Shou was indeed considerable. The realm of these ghosts and monsters is not profound, and most of them are just wandering souls, with only a few ghost soldiers among them. But with Lin Shou's refining, the total amount and quality of true qi are slowly increasing. At the same time, on the gateway deep in Lin Shou's mind, the half-open and half-closed eye pattern kept lighting up. The changes that occurred in Lin Shou's body naturally occurred deep in his mind. Little ghost moving technique, 5 ghosts carrying mountain technique, exorcism technique, inspiration technique, possession technique, paper separation technique, 100 ghosts night journey. Swallowing these ghosts not only made the true qi controlled by Lin Shou's body roar like a big river, but also gave birth to many unconventional spells related to ghosts, the quantity and variety of which will not be revealed at this moment. Of course, while devouring these ghosts, the cost of the shoujing also came with it, but Lin Shou was already prepared. I saw paper figures flying out of his sleeve one after another, while Lin Shou's mind twitched slightly. Cost transfer. The 2 entangled spiritual threads on the portal lit up, and the cost that should have followed the increase of true qi and many spells in Lin Shou's body suddenly disappeared from his body. And those paper figures that flew out quickly became like being roasted by flames, burning and then decaying into a pile of ashes. This situation naturally caught the attention of the Lingluo female ghost king, but she couldn't understand why Lin Shou had swallowed so many ghosts and had no impact. The Lingluo female ghost king has been the body of ghosts for hundreds of years. After hundreds of years, her strength has not only improved to the realm of ghost king, but also gained an understanding of many mysteries in this world. Therefore, she also knows some secrets about the inheritance of the old Taoist and Lin Shou, which seems to enhance strength by devouring ghosts and spirits. The most prominent feature of this course is its rapid improvement in strength, yet everyone is a short-lived ghost. However, due to their strong strength and short lifespan, even if they dominate the cultivation world, few people actively oppose them. On the contrary, due to their extremely strong strength, strange spells, and mysterious and diverse methods, most of them are willing to trade with them. This is also why the Lingluo female ghost king is willing to make a deal with the old Taoist. Lin Shou in front of him clearly shattered his understanding of this inheritance. Although Shoujing has the ability to refine the essence of heaven and earth, it is also limited. Each time refining essence consumes lifespan and requires time to digest, otherwise the cost will quickly cause them to transform into monsters. If a reckless act of refining like Lin Shou, no matter how long his lifespan is, it will not be enough for him to use. It is even more likely that he had already been transformed into a crazed monster without any sanity by the cost of various spells before consuming all his lifespan. Lin Shou did not show any signs of alienation and madness, but instead, his true energy flowed endlessly. Under the shaping of the Shou Jing, a spiritual platform with a faint aura was established in the depths of Lin Shou's sea of consciousness. In my mind, the magnificent Ling Tai is like an ancient altar, with 5 giant steels standing on it, each engraved with 5 ancient texts. Gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. And 1/3 of the tombstone lit up, emitting a faint light. Xiao Cui, Lao Liang, we can't let him continue with this anymore. Hurry up. After confirming that Lin Shou was indeed the inheritor of the old Taoist, Ling Luo became even more cautious. She knew that the 3 spells mentioned by Lin Shou were likely true, so she asked her subordinates to go and test them. After Lin Shou absorbed all the ghosts around him, he felt that his whole body was full of strength, and his true energy constantly washed through his body, constantly improving his physical fitness. Seeing 2 ghost generals attacking him, Lin Shou chuckled and 5 paper figures flew out of his cuffs again. These 5 paper figures are tall and powerful, with armor painted on their bodies and a horse-slaying sword in their hands. The paper tying technique taught by the old Taoist was only superficial, and apart from being like a real person who could transfer the cost for Lin Shou, he did not have the ability to act on his own. However, if we combine this paper binding magic with the other 2 spells that Lin Shou just acquired, it will be a different story. Exorcism Dao. Side Gate Spell, Explanation. Able to forcibly capture Yin Si Li Gui for one's own use. Cost. Fierce Ghost Backlash, Weak Yang Energy. The spell immediately caused Lin Shou to capture 5 fierce ghosts from outside the Blackstone Mansion. These 5 fierce ghosts were all about to be promoted to the realm of Ghost Generals, equivalent to newly entered cultivators. If it were an ordinary fierce ghost, it would be impossible for them to compete with the 2 ghost generals in front of them. No matter how many ants there are, it is impossible to kill elephants. This is the difference in realm. But what's different at this moment is that behind these 5 fierce ghosts stands Lin Shou, who has used another spell. Spirit Enchantment Technique Dao. Side Gate Spell Dao Shu. Reversing Yin and Yang can make the soul attached to people. Cost. Reversing Yin and Yang is an act against heaven, consuming the caster's lifespan. This was originally a spell to summon the newly deceased to deal with aftermath, but when combined with the 5 carefully woven paper figures that Lin Shugang had just thrown out, 5 fierce generals resembling heavenly weapons suddenly appeared beside him. After Lin Shou transferred the cost of the spell to the paper man on the sleeve, he lightly tapped his finger, and the 5 strong men grabbed their swords and rushed towards the 2 ghost generals. In an instant, it was. The 5 generals bravely stepped out of the battlefield, and the iron cavalry galloped with ghostly blood. Courage soars into the sky, courage surpasses others and vows to forget. The fierce ghosts appeared in the battle formation, and a fierce aura filled the field. The spirit of war rises everywhere, fearless of death, and the sound of swords and knives striking each other is strong. The 5 strong men had weapons and solid bodies in their hands, even if their realm was not as good as those 2 ghost generals. With a large number of people and excellent equipment, they could not distinguish between top and bottom at any time. The Lingluo female ghost king was intimidated by the 3 unknown spells and dared not act, but Lin Shou did not have this worry. True energy was injected into the spirit money sword, and the sword body extended into a 3-foot green sword. With a bleeding and hazy glow emanating from his body, Lin Shou's physical fitness was greatly enhanced with the blessing of his spiritual consciousness gathering technique. This spell can double your physical fitness, and is one of the most useful spells in both the early and late stages. Although Lin Shou was on guard against Ling Luo's attack, the devastating damage of the spirit money sword to the ghost body and Lin Shou's own combat power were enough to tilt the scales of the entire battle. I don't know if it's loyalty to the female ghost king or for some other reason, even though the two ghost generals have reached the end of their lives, they still won't take a step back. After weakening the two ghost generals to a certain extent, Lin Shou once again performed the old trick, pinching the magic seal in his hand and turning them into two streams of light and inhaling them into his body. The surging true qi in Lin Shou's body rapidly washed away, rapidly refining the newly swallowed true qi. End of this chapter.